So today's webinar is on the digital identity and passwordless authentication. The passwordless authentication topic is something which is an extremely hot topic today. And the other hot topic that we all keep on hearing today is about the zero trust. So this is one webinar in which I'm going to cover both of these, and also the practical relevance of how you could help your organizations set up something in the direction of zero trust. And passwordless authentication, of course, happens to be an extremely important aspect of it. A word on Ilantus for those of you who do not know much about Ilantus and its flagship product called Compact Identity, also popularly known in the industry as CI now. We have been in business for 22 long years as a company, and all of it has been in the space of identity and access management. We are known for our innovation capabilities, having 3 patents, having been termed by Gartner as one of the most innovative, what they call innovative vendors. We have been in the Gartner's Magic Quadrant. We have been with the KuppingerCole's leadership compass and all that. Altogether, more than 70 years of IAM and cybersecurity experience right at the leadership level. We have established multiple products over the tenure of our company. And very interestingly, have an advisory board that essentially is out of industry leaders and experts. Many of them happen to be also in identity and access management. We have a very, very vibrant and young global partner ecosystem, including 3 of the top of the Magic 4 consulting companies in the world. Well, this is just a little about our global footprint, and let me move on. Interesting thing here is that today, Ilantus systems manage more than 10 million identities in the world. More than 2 million logins happen every day on Ilantus through Ilantus systems. Just a little bit about our history. Don't want to spend too much of time there. The later end of the history is more important. 2018, 19, and 2020. From 2018, we have seen massive surge in our customer acquisition. 2019, we have had the foundation that was laid for the risk engine zero trust. In 2020, we began offering a lot of these services on our identity and access platform. If we look at Gartner, and this is a very important slide, and perhaps the last one before I move on to the zero trust and the passwordless authentication. This is the latest from Gartner on identity governance and administration, which is the core of identity and access management. They have put all the different players in this domain into 3 categories. First one being the specialized IAM tool players. These players are people who have only 1 or 2 functionality, but they have specialized or super specialized themselves to serve a specific industry segment like the healthcare or something. So they're not really full-blown identity governance administration players, but niche functionality players. Then you have got the IGA suite, you know of many such names in the industry. But the most important component or the section of IAM community today, from a vendor perspective, according to Gartner, is the converged IAM with light IGA, what they call. This is a category where there are only 3 vendors today as leaders: Microsoft, Ilantus, and Okta. But interestingly enough, when it comes to the Okta and Microsoft, they truly fall in the category of good access management, light IGA. Ilantus is the only one, or the Compact Identity is the only product in the industry which overlaps a good bit of functionality of IGA suite as well. So leaping up from its converged IAM space, it also intersects in the IGA suite space, the only vendor in the world to do that today. These are some of the KuppingerCole leadership compass. We happen to be in the leadership category in both of them. With that, let me get into the zero trust model and passwordless authentication. The first question that comes up is, what is zero trust security? A lot is being said about zero trust security today. And frankly, every single vendor that talks in the industry claims to talk about delivering almost a complete zero trust security. No one in the industry delivers complete zero trust security. There are, if you look at the NIST guidelines, which are the most accepted guidelines in the world, zero trust security model has got 6 different pillars, and almost all the vendors would perhaps offer 1, 2, or maximum 3 of these pillars. And a zero trust security solution has to be essentially architected and put in place by the vendors, by the customers themselves, by selecting a set of tools and processes. However, a security model of zero trust essentially is based on strict identity verification process, and only authenticated and authorized users and devices can access application and data. So the most important part on this slide is the strategy around zero trust boils down to never trust, always verify. This is not how our industry or all our customers in the world have operated all this while. Once people are given access to something, they're trusted. Once you happen to be a part of an inside, let us say, network, you are trusted. That's how the world of the information technology has been in the past. But because of the kind of cyber crimes and the cyber vulnerabilities that everybody has gotten into, it is not possible anymore that once trusted should be trusted for a while. Once trusted on a device has to be trusted on another device, and so on. So that whole model has collapsed in the last few years, leading and paving way for zero trust model, where you say you never trust and you always verify. So if I got verified for my mobile device just about 2 minutes ago, if I'm trying to do something else, once again, I'll have to verify. So there is no trust called always trust anymore in the zero trust model. And that's a model that has become de facto, or at least becoming the standard de facto model in the industry now. So why zero trust? We all know large number of breaches, the attackers happen to be not from outside, but from inside. There is good intent from the insiders, but sometimes there can be bad judgment. And we see this all the while nowadays, especially even people who are technically very sound forget about senior management, which may or may not be. The intent can be good when they try to log in and adhere to security practices, but they may make very bad judgments, leading to a lot of breaches that happen. As I said, in the earlier assumption that used to be there, that I trust traffic on the inside, that has evaporated, is as risky as outside. Alternatives like the software-defined networks are exceptionally hard to deploy, operate, and debug in the present now. I'm just giving you some examples. So SDNs you all know about. SDFs, the software-defined firewalls that attempt to secure every node in a network, they are also getting flawed in today's world. There is enough reason for zero trust to be becoming so popular as we have seen over the last 2 to 3 years. In fact, just about 3 years or 4 years ago, zero trust was for the first time coined as a set of words, and that has become now the de facto, or becoming the de facto standard. A number of reasons for that. The latest one, of course, is working from home because of the COVID, which is likely to continue even after COVID. All the experts agree. Large number of organizations already have vowed to be working from home even after the pandemic is over. But that is the latest reason. Before that, if you really look at the industry, I think the SaaS and the PaaS, the software as a service and platform as a service, these solutions have come from outside into organizations. They're being taken in by all the customer organizations from outside. These are not inside solutions, and that means that organizations no longer own their applications. A big change that has occurred from the times when most of the applications were owned by organizations. Applications and workloads have moved to the cloud, where they are now part of the unsecured internet. And this is perhaps one of the biggest reasons why we see so much breaches, and in spite of the budgets on security becoming many, many times more from just about 5 years ago, why we have so much more of security breaches happening. So zero trust has turned out to become the kind of technology or the roadmap towards which organizations are moving all over. The steps towards a zero trust network, essentially, you do a few things, and I have just listed some of the most important things that you do. You identify how traffic moves across the organization in relation to product surface. This is very, very important, and this is done very carefully. Many organizations have begun hiring experts to do this, and it's always a good idea to do that because it's very difficult for inside IT organizations to be able to do this identification. Put controls in place as close to the protect surface as possible, and that's very important. As you know, the protect surfaces are becoming much, much bigger than what they used to be. And not only these controls have to be put in terms of creating a microperimeter around it, something that I'll discuss as I go forward. Create a microperimeter by deploying a segmentation gateway. All of you who have been familiar and are studying products coming in from various vendors on areas like SDP, software-defined perimeter and all that, you know how the micro-segmentations are being done. Establish zero trust policy based on who, what, when, where, why, and how. There are too many questions out here. But these are essentially various parameters. So who is zero trust essentially lays a lot of emphasis on putting policies in place. So who is going to come into, let us say, access, where all they are going to log in, and where all this kind of data is lying to which has to be accessed. More importantly, why does somebody would need to access that? There are two most important aspects over here. One is the moment we talk in terms of who, what, when, where, why, and how, one most significant thing that comes up is the identity, because identity is one single thread which runs right across all these parameters that we are talking about. And the other end of it is the access part of it. The access is nothing but the identity is going to use for conducting its purpose and objectives in the organization. And finally, continue to monitor and maintain in real time. So it's not easy. You're talking about putting policies, you're talking about putting controls to protect these threat surfaces. The threat surface themselves have to be defined. Policies have to be put in place considering so many various parameters. And then on top of that, we are talking about monitoring and maintaining in real time. So these are some of the steps. In fact, these are the key steps towards building and maintaining a zero trust network. That brings me to the important aspect of passwordless authentication and what is really the connection between zero trust and passwordless authentication. So passwordless authentication in a very simple way can be described as any authentication method that forgoes the use of passwords. Now, why is it important to forego passwords and not use passwords? We have all used passwords since we're perhaps children, ever since we have been using the IT systems. This particular slide, this is from Gartner, shows on two axes, security and convenience. And this is, as I go forward into my presentation, this is one of the most important themes that have been picked up by the industry and is equally important for customers today. So the more convenient you make something, the less secure it becomes. And by the same token, if you make things less convenient, you have to make things less convenient if you want to make them highly secure. Now, if you look at something like authentication itself, it follows the same, it used to follow the same guidelines. Passwords are something which are low security and are not so convenient. So this is the reason passwords are going away, because even though the convenience is less, the security is still low. Two-factor authentication with password as the first factor, they happen to be in an area which are inconvenient and moderately okay on the security side, on the level of security. Passwords, as we all know, can be hacked easily, and passwords today are said to be the reason for 79% of the breaches that happen across the world with corporate organizations. And therefore, password is something which is not a very convenient thing. We all know about the difficulties of remembering so many passwords, putting together, changing so many passwords, and so on. Also, it happens to be insecure thing. Passwordless authentication on this matrix that I'm showing happens to be highly secure and highly convenient. And I'll talk about that as to why it is being said to be in that category. Let's take a quick look before we go to understand a little about the benefits of going passwordless. Let's talk about the benefits of going passwordless first. So the first is, as you could understand, improved security. In so many ways, passwords are being stolen. So that gets eliminated because the passwords themselves are eliminated in this technology. The threat-resistant login options, because there are no passwords to type, the likelihood of being phished is also reduced. Visibility and control for the administrators. When implementing passwordless authentication, admins control this. From a control perspective, the administrators get much more to, they become visible to, and therefore they are able to control. Another very interesting aspect of passwordless authentication is scalability. Simply because rather than the organization providing all the necessary resources for doing the authentication, the resource coming in from the user himself, and typically it is the mobile device, the mobile device's facilities like the biometric is used to log into the corporate data. And this is perhaps the most radical departure that has happened when we talk about the passwordless authentication from any other authentication that has been there in the market all this while. Low total cost of ownership, even though the initial cost of initial investments could be there, the total cost of ownership is much low because you're eliminating passwords and allowing end users to recover their own accounts. So as we know, when you forget passwords, going to the help desk or using another system to take care of that part, they're all fairly expensive exercises in the long run. That also gets eliminated here. But the most significant thing about passwordless authentication is that in spite of producing a very, very high level of security, it also provides great user experience. And no wonder Gartner predicts that over the next just about 3 years, the total passwordless authentication market is going to be in excess of $20 to $30 billion, going up from nowhere. 3-4 years ago, there was zero market for passwordless authentication, and we are talking about 20 to 30 billion market With that, actually, the market growth for passwordless authentication is put as one of the highest growth in the whole industry, not just in security. Now let's talk about zero trust and password combination for a short while. As I said in the beginning, zero trust functions on the principle of never trust, always verify. All traffic is authenticated over and over and over again. No connection is permitted implicitly, whether from within or outside the network. Now, this is very interesting. When we get into do something like that, we are talking about very large number of authentications. What would have happened 3 years ago as one authentication would perhaps get replaced in today's world with 10 to 15 authentications if you're talking about a zero trust journey. With so many and such large number of authentications, there is what we call a significant friction at the customer's end, at the user's end. They also reduce the security of a zero trust network considerably, because if you continue to use conventional methods with zero trust, conventional authentication methods with zero trust, the amount of friction that you will create for the user is unbelievable. Nobody would like to log in and whatever it could be because it's highly inconvenient. And if you are using password as a factor, then imagine the number of times you'll have to change it if you have to go at that rate of authentication. Hence, it is very, very important to combine zero trust with passwordless authentication. It is not possible now to conceive of a zero trust implementation without passwordless authentication for the reasons I just described. Some of the reasons why passwordless authentication is becoming so popular and why it is getting embraced by such a growing market is because it has the highest level of assurance, which is at the NIST AAL3 level, and visibility. It encourages continuous authorization, which is not possible without continuous authentication. And authentication is no longer considered to be a static event, as I just described. Gone are the days when we were talking about, as I kept on saying in this webinar, when we were just trying to do authentication once and we could do multiple authorizations. It's not happening anymore because of zero trust kind of a philosophy that everybody is trying to practice. A passwordless environment that relies on certificate-based authentication inherently carries a much lower level of risk and this is something that is quite understandable. This is very interesting and perhaps will give you a very simple way of looking at the authentication factors, zero trust and passwordless authentication. So we all know that the ways to authenticate have been of three types, based on what you know, what you have, and what you are. For those of you who have not thought that way, what you know essentially is you know passwords, you know, or remember your security questions, you know your usernames and all that. What you can have over the last few years we have seen is on one side things like the SMS OTPs, on the other side soft tokens, hard tokens, key fobs, and so on. These are the things that you possess. And what you are is obviously things like biometrics, different kinds of biometrics. So these are the three authentication factors that are commonly used. Zero trust very clearly prescribes that you need to have multi-factor authentication. That means two of these three factors have to be chosen. So let's look at various combinations. When we look at the combination 1 and 2, we end up being embracing the inherent weaknesses of passwords. And this increasingly becomes more because of the weakness of the passwords. This is not a two-factor authentication, but it's actually a single-factor authentication. It can be easily compromised, as we have recently seen that even SMS OTPs and so on, many of these factors are easily hackable. Even the biometric, unless it is with some sort of emotion, like some amount of static biometric is no more considered to be not compromisable. So the options of 1 and 2 combined together are not really worth implementing. If you look at 1 and 3, again, it will suffer from the same issues, though some of the factors in 3 are better, but the inherent weaknesses of 1 are continue there. Therefore, the only option that is considered worthwhile now is option 2 and 3. Typically, password utilizes a combination and hence very much suits trust environment. Understanding of password authentication and zero trust. Let me talk a little about the very interesting area Ilantus, also being a leading identity and access management player, has ventured into and already has a solution which is highly regarded as one of the good solutions in the industry today. Before I go there, once again, what I showed to you earlier, which was the usability and security, convenience and security. Perhaps we can summarize what I spoke to you earlier through this one single chart. Secret, single factor, they have been moved up over a period of time by combining it with something else to make it a little better. And the higher end of it, if you see, the more you go to the right and above, is what is becoming possible because of the passwordless authentication. So the passwordless is moving this to a highly usable state, so even though it is highly secure. We are redefining the way digital identity can be managed now. These are various factors of digital identity. We have got private keys, we have got biometric, we've got a corporate identity, we've got government issued documents like the passport, driver's license. We also have got we can have our cards, a credit card or bank or telecom identity that we may be carrying. And these are that's the first thing that need to be captured, what we call the process of entry. So you capture it, you verify it, you triangulate, and then you store it. That's the first step in doing our passwordless authentication. And this is a one-time exercise. You must have gotten introduced to the topic of identity proofing, which is a very manual exercise in many countries. Like in India, if you want to get yourself KYC done, you have to provide your Aadhaar card, you have to provide your PAN card, and these are taken by the vendor who has to verify you, and this has to be a process of manual verification. But out here, it is possible in our technology to do this portion automatically. We are in the process of connecting the system to the Aadhaar system and so on, because these systems do expose the APIs to authenticate so that one can do the proofing automatically through our system. The second portion is once this whole thing has been collected and the enrollment process is complete, then you go to the authentication process, which is identity based, and it is built on multi-factor authentication. largely on the biometric verification, and any kind of biometric can be used through our system. Third portion, after authentication's been done, is to verify the credentials, which is the industry and personal identity attributes and credentials. So when somebody presents that, it is verified through the enrollment process that has happened in step 1. That whole process, once that has been over, then the whole thing is stored and shared. In our case, it is all based on blockchain technology, so that the storage and sharing of information and secure. Each one of these processes that I talked about, 4 steps, have the highest level of certification. Like our enrollment process complies to NIST 800 and EIDAS, which are the highest level of identity verification process in the world today. Authentication is, again, all the latest factors of authentication and protocols that are there, we support. Same is true for verification of credentials and storing and sharing. As I said, we have the highest level of platform certifications. This is not one of the ordinary solutions which could be very inexpensive and yet and would not offer the right kind of credentials. This is a premium solution. It's a very premier solution, which is certified by the FIDO Alliance, GDPR, NIST, which is perhaps the highest authority in the world today for any such certifications. So we confirm to all of them. There are 2 journeys that I will take here. When we talk about a consumer, so this solution that we have, first of all, is not only works through our own access management systems like Compact Identity, but you don't have to purchase any of our other systems. You can just purchase, as a user, organizations, you can just purchase our passwordless authentication technology and apply it, even if you have your own single sign-on system, and you have purchased a single sign-on system from some other vendor, this product is still as much usable. Whether you want to apply it to a device or a user or a network or anything else, an application for that matter, you can apply that very easily. So this product is available in both standalone as well as working with our own access management technology forms. Every touch point in a consumer's journey requires nowadays passwordless, has the possibility of using our technology. I talked about customer enrollment. So this is the consumer journey, so B2C kind of a use case, where the customer enrollment that is done one time. I talked about the identity proofing part of it that can be done. And then as you go into a transaction, you can use it, whether it happens to be a driving transaction or an online banking transaction or a physical retail transaction or an ATM transaction or an online retail transaction. Any of these kind of transactions, if your company is using that, if your company is dealing with that or any other kind of transaction, our authentication technology can be applied there. A very exciting technology that if you happen to be a B2C organization, then you can use it for your consumer journey. On the other hand, if you would like to use it for your own workforce journey, for your own employees, contractors, temporary workers, and so on, then again, you can use it for employee enrollment. You can use it for physical access. So the same technology works for, it can be combined with your physical access technologies also. It can be used for Windows login. And this is very, very important because application login comes only after the Windows login. And you could use this technology for authentication for Windows login itself. I will just show you a couple of slides towards the end to give you a sense of that. It can be used for logging into your Unix boxes or your privilege access management solution or your OS or any other solution, and so on and so forth. Interestingly, you can also use it for remote access, making your remote access very, very safe, secure thing, as well as a very convenient way of doing access management. Using our identity safe, you can use it for passwordless login. I'm not getting into the details for this shortage of time, but you can log in with biometrics. Permissioned access gets granted based on the ledger that is kept in the system, which is based on, as I said, very, very secure blockchain technology. Key features of our product: it's 100% compliant, as you saw with the cyber authentication technology solutions. It comes with very simple SDK for easy customization and integration. It combines ease of use and enhanced security. The users capture their face, voice, and fingerprints on a secure mobile app that is supported by a blockchain. This is perhaps the most important thing. The way mobile is becoming popular, large number of smartphones already have the voice or fingerprint or facial recognition technology available. Over the next few years, this is going to become almost available on every single smartphone. So this is a very, very good investment for short and long term. If I give you just quick preview of this, one more minute I'll take. If you use it with our product, SSO product, Compact Identity, and this is how the login screen would look like. You still have the option of username, password. You may use passwordless authentication only in such cases where people have a mobile device which is a smartphone, which supports biometric kind of an authentication. And by using the capability, the mobile capabilities, biometric capabilities of the mobile device, you can use it to seamlessly log in into the Compact Identity. So that's one possible use case. You can use the same thing for non-federated applications. You can use the same for federated applications. And you can also use it for your own desktop access. As I said, you can also use it without Compact Identity if you already have a single sign-on system. So this does not require you to have necessarily a single sign-on system from Ilantus. But in case you do, there's a very healthy option on that also available. So essentially, we covered in this webinar things about zero trust, what it is, why it becomes so important, what are the benefits, and what are some of the most important things to be implemented in zero trust. We went on to talk about the passwordless authentication, how that is become one of the most important things in case you really want to implement zero trust, without zero trust today is now difficult to conceive without passwordless authentication. And finally, we looked at the product from Ilantus, which qualifies to be one of the best products in the world, one of the most efficient products, and one of the products which complies to all the necessary guidelines and specifications of passwordless authentication from different institutes, user communities, geographies, and so on. That brings me to the end of this session. I'll be very happy to take on some questions. I seem to have just about a few minutes left, but it'll be good if you can send your questions, and we would come back to you. Please send your name and we should be able to capture it anyway. If you have, I can see many of our partners also in this session. You'd like us to just give you more understanding of passwordless authentication, we would be happy to do that. If you happen to be a consulting company or a consultant that has been working with the user communities, this kind of a technology, knowing about it would, and giving examples of this to your customers would also be very, very useful. So I can see a lot of questions, and I don't think we can take all of them in a small session, in the remaining time. So once again, I would make a request to all of you to send your questions, and we would come back to you one-on-one, answering each one of the questions in detail. Just last point I want to make is, have 2 more minutes. The passwordless authentication technology of Ilantus has been available for a while outside India, but now it's available in Asia as well. And we have got some very interesting offers that are there, especially if you want to try it out quickly before March. And if you if you already happen to be a customer of Ilantus Access Management, and you would like to add passwordless authentication to that, as well as if you have been using some of the other products of Ilantus and you'd like to now try out the passwordless authentication, we would be very happy to offer you trials. We'd be happy to give you some very special offers to take this new technology of Ilantus. There are some additional things that we also are about to offer in the Indian market, and one of them happens to be a very exciting technology, which is what we call the Security Assurance Center, which is a replacement of the very old technology of what we call SOC, which is Security Operations Centers. These Security Operations Assurance Centers like ours, which is based on some of the latest technology, is able to give you, at a fraction of the cost, much higher levels of security assurance than the traditional security operations centers. You don't have to purchase the kind of tools, security tools, monitor them constantly, only to find a few true positives. So this is based on a very advanced technology, and we are offering it in conjunction with compact identity so that it becomes more like what we call a security, not assurance center only, but an identity-centric security assurance center. So again, if you're interested in knowing more about it, please do let us know. We'll be very happy to share that. Thank you and have a great day.